Welcome to One-on-One with Expert Flyer. This is your host, Lisa Caslin. As the worldwide demand for sending and receiving more information in less time increases, wireless carriers have been rolling out 5G to satisfy our need for speed. But what does that have to do with travel? Well, if you've been reading the headlines lately, there's been a bit of controversy. And our guest today is Bob Knight. He's the CEO of Harrison Edwards, a New York metro area PR and marketing firm with a specialty in telecommunications. They service high profile clients across broadband networks. And he's here to talk a little bit about that and help us sort of demystify what this controversy is all about. So thanks for joining, Bob. Good to see you.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So just to, give us a little bit of a primer here, what exactly is 5G and how does it kind of all work?
So 5G is a relatively new uh, type of cellular service. We'll call it wireless service here in the US. In theory, it's going to provide a lot of bandwidth, a lot of speed for wireless users, and we need a lot of that capacity and bandwidth and speed to move enormous amounts of data. So it looks like businesses will certainly embrace 5G technology. Question is going to be, if it's more of a consumer play or more of an enterprise play over time, but we're going to find out. So it's the next wave of wireless technology is a good way to look at it.
Okay, so now the controversy associated with aircraft and some of the instruments used on aircraft, I think in particular altimeters, which helps pilots, regulate, I guess, their distance from the ground, right?
Mhm.
Um, eh, they're saying that apparently they're sharing the same space, I guess, on the spectrum in some cases, and that this might interfere with that instrumentation. What do you say about that? Is there truth to that?
Well, there may or may not be some truth. The challenge with 5G is that there's no real 50-year study on this because it's brand new.
Yeah.
So we have to sort of look at best practices. We have to look at some of the studies that have been out there, and there are countries in Asia and Europe that are a little more advanced in terms of their 5G networks than we are here in the States. I think first and foremost, aviation operates in a safety culture. It's never been safer to fly.
Uh-huh.
And I think even with this interference, it will still remain safe to fly because pilots are trained to deal with anomalies like this, and they will always make the right decision, and they will always err on the side of caution. And I think that's what some of this controversy is. And I'm a frequent flyer. I fly about 125,000 miles a year, and I have full confidence in the aviation community and in what they do. Now, your question is 5G and the frequencies. So 5G uses a sort of a multitude of bands, and not to get too technical here.
Uh-huh.
One of the bands that it uses for its signals is called C-band. Now, C-band hasn't traditionally been widely used in this capacity.
Mhm.
So the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, has approved 5G C-band in sort of the range of 3.7 to 3.98 gigahertz. Now, the radar altimeters that airliners use or the aviation industry uses operates between 4.2 and 4.4 gigahertz. So they're very, very close on the spectrum to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the potential for some interference to occur. So think of it like back in sort of the old days when you were listening to the radio before we had digital radio. It was sort of analog, and you'd be tuning the dial, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be near another frequency or two stations or an out of town station. You get a little bit of interference or a little bit on the frequency, and that's sort of what the potential issue is that the FAA and the airlines are bringing up.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's just, to me, it seems like it's been deployed fairly pervasively in other parts of the world, in Europe and in Asia. And to my knowledge, there has not been any issue to date. And I guess as a layman, what I'm thinking of is, well, if we add more people, and we have, a pretty big swath of people here in the United States, does does the volume of people affect this propensity to leak into that other frequency, or am I
Mm,
completely off on that?
I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how to answer that question. But it's my understanding that it really has to do with where in the spectrum the frequencies lie. So in Europe, for instance, the C band that is permissible is around 3.5 gigahertz. In the US, it's much closer to that 4 in that area. So they don't have those issues in Europe in their 5G rollouts.
Okay. Okay. So, what's your message to fly? And you're a flyer, a frequent flyer yourself. So, what is your message to folks? Do you think? Well, I mean, obviously, if the FAA decides that it is safe, I mean, I'm not sure. The delays kind of keep happening, so
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious to know exactly what it is they're doing to kind of come to a conclusion on all of this. Like what are there has to be some way to test this effectively.
So I think there's a couple of things. First and foremost, I think we have to understand what this potential interference is causing. So it's causing some cues on the ground proximity warnings, the radio altimeters, and so in the cockpit, pilots are getting these ground proximity warnings that
Hmm.
are happening when they're not close to the ground. So anecdotally, there's been we've heard stories of planes that are taking off out of New York's Kennedy Airport, and they're taking off into the sky and they're getting a ground proximity warning, out over the water. So we know that's not true. But there's an incident that happened in San Francisco end of December. We don't know if it's related to this, but this is what happens when you get an erroneous ground proximity warning. There was a Delta Airlines Boeing 767 that was landing from north to south on the 19s, and the pilots in the cockpit did receive that ground proximity warning, so they opted to go around. That was their company procedure, and they came around for the same runway again, same issue. So they opted to land at Oakland. So that's what happens when you have some interference and some trigger. Now, I'm not saying that 5G caused that or not. We don't know, but
Right.
those are the results, right? So you'll start seeing, you know, if there's interference, you'll start seeing some planes, that can't land in the fog because they can't use an auto land feature, right?
Yep.
It looks like the U.S. airlines and the FAA, I believe, have said, okay, no more auto landing
Hmm.
in the U.S. till this is sorted out. But I think what is great here is that you have the wireless industry, you
Hmm.
have the FAA, I believe now the FCC is getting involved. You have the airlines, and they're all sort of coming together to find a solution. And historically, they've all worked in silos.
Hmm.
So I think it's great, and kudos to the wireless industry who
Yeah.
has been delaying and trying to get to the bottom of this. They feel they have a safe product, but
Uh-huh.
they want to be part of that solution also.
Well, I mean, maybe this is just sounds like an oversimplified compromise, but what if they just blocked 5G around the airports? Would that not work?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly one of the things that's being proposed. I believe there's a list of 50 airports that they're going to block the zones. I believe in Europe what they do with the 5G antennas, and I think in Canada too, is they aim them down instead of straight out. You see, to understand 5G technology, 5G is very different than like your 4G LTE, where you'd have a cellular tower, a tall tower,
Hmm.
and broadcast out to a large area.
Hmm.
5G, because you're using millimeter wave technology, the signals don't go as far. So you need those 5G radios, those 5G transmitters, that every 300 or 400 feet. Of course,
Oh.
they need to be attached into fiber in order to work properly because there's so much data that gets moved around. So
Uh-huh.
every 300 or 400 feet, you have one of these little radio devices emitting sort of a low power signal.
Wow.
And so you need a real proliferation of these 5G antennas,
Uh-huh.
these little radio transmitters, in order to have seamless service. So it's a complex issue. It's not as simple as
Yeah.
just one tower and powering it down. It's part of a network, and you sort of have
Yeah.
to understand that. So that's why I'm really glad that all these various industry entities across a multitude of industries are coming together on this.
Okay. So the last word, you're feeling positive about this. There will be a positive conclusion.
Well, there will be a positive conclusion, right? Again, the FAA, particularly the FAA, after the 737 Max debacle, is really, instituting a
Hmm.
culture of safety.
Yep.
Airlines operate, the whole aviation industry is about a culture of safety. So they're not going to make any moves or be forced to do anything, politically, in general. They're going to always err on the side of caution. If I'm the wireless industry, I'm not going to like the negative publicity on this, so I'm going to want to be part of that solution too.
Hmm.
So, is flying safe today? Is it going to continue to be safe even with 5G near the airports? Absolutely. It may change some procedures, or there may be just some decisions to change the technology that's in and around airports.
All right, fair enough. Listen, thank you so much for your time and for illuminating us on this very complicated topic. Tell us where we can find more information about you and your firm.
Sure, we're Harrison Edwards. We're an integrated marketing agency, and we're Harrison-EdwardsPR.com.
Terrific. A pleasure. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, bye-bye.